Well, hello and welcome to Red Piranha's latest Knowledge Sprint. I'm George Boulis, Red Piranha's General Manager of Sales and Marketing. Just to frame what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to dive into an important topic that's reshaping the global cyber landscape. That is the escalating demand for enhanced cyber protections for critical infrastructure and operational technology, or OT stacks. As governments worldwide tighten regulations, it is imperative to stay ahead. In this session, we will break down these essential protections, showcasing Red Piranha's innovative passive encryption controls that set us apart from the field. We will have the opportunity at the conclusion of the presentation, time permitting, for a question and answer session. But right now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the very handsome gentleman that I have presenting today. We have Richard McLeod, who is our system administrator, and Amar Dash, who's our network solution architect, and they'll take us through today's technology showcase. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, George. I'm Richard, and today I'll be going over our topics. So we'll be going over designing and deploying a secure network in line with Zero Trust and the ISA IEC 62433. We'll be going over implementing segmentation, such as VLANs, zones, and air gaps, how to monitor your network for malicious traffic, and using crystallized passive encryption control to protect your network from IoT devices. So Zero Trust network architecture is a methodology for building secure corporate networks. ZTNA is all about implementing strict access management controls that help prevent unsanctioned activity on the network. Think firewall access control lists, user access management, such as the principle of least privilege, and switch port security and network segmentation techniques. I like to think that the difference between, as a concept, the principle of least privilege and Zero Trust is the principle of least privilege, you would think trust but verify. Zero Trust would be don't trust, verify, and then you can trust. Now I'll go over the ISA IEC 62433. So it was created by the International Society of Automation in the US. It was established as they established the ISA 99 standards in 2002 as a response to the rising threats against digital infrastructure from a cybersecurity perspective. So these are international standards that are also endorsed by the United Nations. The founding principle of these standards is the concept of shared responsibility as an essential building block for automating cybersecurity solutions. So this framework, it provides the common terms, concepts, and models for security controls. So it helps the asset owners determine the level of security, the level of risk that is required for an asset. This standard has established a common set of requirements and a cybersecurity lifecycle methodology for product developers, including a mechanism to certify products and vendor development processes. So defining the risk assessment processes that are critical to protecting control systems. So now we're just going to go over segmentation. I'm going to show you an example of a network that doesn't follow these standards and why, and what the issues with it are. So here we have a simple network. This would be called a flat network. So we have a number of endpoints. We've got a workstation for accounts, HR, IT. We've got some OT devices as well, an OT server, some Internet of Things IoT devices as well. And the problem with this network is that every device can communicate with each other. So if just one of these devices is breached or a threat actor gets their hands on it, they can use that to breach any other device in the network. If you imagine that our OT part of the network is say a wastewater treatment plant, if a threat actor, a foreign government got access to that and it were in their interest to manipulate the water supply for a location, that could have serious consequences. So that kind of scenario is exactly what these standards are built for. So I'm going to show you a modified version of this network that does take into account the ISA 62433 standards and zero trust, and takes them on board when architecting the network. So we have the same devices here, but we've reorganized everything into zones, VLANs, and we've also utilized an air gap for the OT zone. So we've got our OT network. It's completely segregated. There's no way for any of those devices to talk to the internet, and there's no way for anyone on the internet to talk to those devices. Those are completely isolated. Only someone on site with explicit physical access can work with that stack. We've separated the IoT zones. We've created an accounts HR zone, an IT zone, and we've minimized the communication between devices. So we're only allowing communication that is absolutely required for the network to run, and for the company to provide what they need to in terms of their services. So that's that. And we'll just briefly go over the controls that were used. So air gapping, as I was saying, an air gap device is a device or network that is completely segregated from any other network, including the internet. So that means that no device can on that network can talk to the internet. Full stop. It's ideal to use air gapping for these OT scenarios. So think power plants, water treatment plants, as we just discussed. That would be considered infrastructure. We also have VLANs and zones. So zones help you to segment your network at the firewall level. VLANs are for segmenting your network at the switch level. These controls are best used in tandem to achieve defense in depth. So that if one does happen to be bypassed, the other one is more challenging to bypass. But speaking of bypassing, we're going to just briefly go over how threat actors bypass segmentation. So a segmented network does make it more challenging for threat actors to get access to their target system. So for example, we could say one of these IoT devices, the IoT light bulb has been breached because it's an IoT device. They have a reputation for being insecure. So threat actors use a technique called pivoting in order to get around segmentation and gain access to their targets. So here we have an example below in which we've got an attacker machine who's on the WAN zone, which is external. And what this threat actor has done here is they've gained access. They've managed to exploit this server called Confluence01. And they've also been able to exploit this server PG Database 01. And we can see that these two servers have access to different zones. And what the threat actor here has done is they've used Confluence01 as a pivot host to further pivot off of PG Database 01. And they've done this to bypass the WAN, the DMZ, and access an internal zone, granting them access to a mystery host inside the network. That is an example of pivoting and using your increased access from a pivot host to reach your target. Now, what this tells us, key takeaways are if you have a server or a host that has access to more than one zone, for example, if it's got multiple interfaces, that host can be used to further breach your network. So it's important to eliminate any excess interfaces. Make sure that we're only allowing required communications across the network to meet zero trust, to meet the ISA 62433. We also need to recognize that potential pivot hosts, they are a greater risk to network security. So look at it, scrutinize it. Can we minimize this communication without harming the company? These are conversations worth having. But we should also use pinholing. So for example, if two servers need to talk, but they only have to do it on one port through one protocol, only allow that, disallow everything else. But that covers the threat actor point of view. I'm going to now hand this over to Dash to go over into a bit more IoT devices and also passive encryption control.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, George. We'll go over, I won't go over again the weaknesses that we have on the IoT devices and the security challenges, but I'm just gonna mention quickly a few things, which is that it is a security challenge when it comes to IoT environment, especially when it comes to access controls. Access control, which is the main weakness and the main element that we face in these environments. So the rule is that services offered by IoT devices should only be accessible by the owner or the people of their immediate environment, who they trust. And unfortunately, we see that often not being the case. Most of IoT devices get trusted into the local networks along the side with a enterprise network and enterprise servers and services, and that obviously with no further authentication or authorization required, and that definitely compromise like how they get compromised. And then we'll show you how you set up a proper segmentation and a proper zoning in the next demo. Another concept that it's important, it's not new, it's been discussed for a while, but unfortunately it hasn't been well implemented. It's the concept of zero trust and segmentation. It's like the rings of trust. The more rings of trust we have, the better off and the more we're protected. We have to take this principle of the least privilege principle into play, and what we need to start reviewing things from the untrusted devices in a network, and we need to separate them from other parts of the operational environment. So and then we need to start incorporate those into our government and apply governance and accountability on the top in the strategic layer, and then integrate the zoning from one zone to and into more integrated zoning, and then incorporate that into a global network security design. And then we start back at the design phase where we can separate the design and implementation, and then definitely enforce the automation of review and the automation of access control of log control and review after that. That is briefly how we can implement zero trust, and then we'll show you as well in the next demo how we can introduce zoning and segmentation within Crystal Eye. So segmentation, definitely when we define segmentation, the most common term will be zones, which is all the assets in the same zone. They follow the same policies. The policies are defined with advanced firewall rule. The new type of micro-segmentation that we have introduced is the segmentation with the device type. So you identify your asset based on the device type, and that definitely comes in handy when it comes to IoT devices. And then you can apply policies to those devices, and you can have sub segmentation as well on the of user device, user identified device types as well. That becomes in very useful when we have active monitoring on those implemented policies on these defined user devices, and as well. The advanced firewall rule definitely applied through these policies will prevent any lateral movement of data from the IoT segment to any other network, internal network segment. And then I'm going to showcase that as well in the demo. Definitely, we need to mention the Passive Encryption Control, which is an application that can monitor encrypted traffic. So the idea behind that is we form a baseline or a fingerprint of the network of the IoT segment, and then any deviation or then that baseline you get alerted and it's considered as anomaly. And we monitor that against we monitor it against the baseline. Enough with the slides. Let's go into the part that we all like, the demo. In this demo, I will be using a physical Crystal Eye appliance. And I think we've done that demo before, but it was to show how we can intervene or a traffic that is coming from an external to an internal IoT device. This time, I'm going to show how to do the segmentation via internal VLANs. So we have VLAN 10.10.1.0, and then we have VLAN 10.20.1.0. The IoT is on the VLAN 10, and then the server, our server VLAN is VLAN 20. As we see as well, they are on different zones. So this is on the zone LAN, and this one, and then the server zone is on the yeah, let's see here. Are you guys following the slides? And the server zone is on zone LAN 20. Let me share my screen so I can take you through the setup here. Yeah. And, okay. So quickly, a quick overview. This is again the subnetworks or subnets that I have. So this is, as we see, subnet, and this is 20. So, and what we can do here as well, and this is they defined here on the network map. So we're gonna as well demonstrate that from the IoT device, we're not able to reach the server network. And in here, this is representing our IoT device. It's on the 10 network, and if I try to reach out to any endpoint or any device on the 20 network, you can see that this is not reachable. It's not going anywhere. So what we're going to showcase now is how to pinhole that traffic on the firewall. So on the firewall, if we go drill down on the security advanced firewall, we can see as well that I've segmented here. So we have the LAN, and then we have the LAN 20. So that two separate zones. So we go through traffic control here and edit that rule. So this is a rule. I've created this rule to pinhole the traffic. It's basically to allow anything from the IoT to the VLAN 20. So it's IoT, it's on VLAN 10 to VLAN 20. So we're just going to select the source here as LAN, and then with destination as our LAN 20. And I'm going to specify the IP of the IoT device that I want to allow to this specific server. One example of that could be that we want to only segment the IoT device so they only communicate with their update servers. So that's one application that we can, one scenario that we need that rule for, and I'm just going to enable that rule. The rule is enabled. Now I'll go back to my IoT device and test. Yeah. Yeah. And then as we can see, as soon as I updated the firewall rules, we can reach now the .20 network. The next thing is we're going to move on to passive encryption. And this is how you pinhole the traffic from one zone to another, and from one segment, one subnet to another. Passive encryption. Yeah, so definitely into that is a passive encryption as well. Introduced a new type of multi-segmentation. So we're going to now map the device based on the device type identified segmentation. So that's the micro segmentation that we will introduce. So if we go under for that, we're going to dive into our network map, and we'll identify this is my IoT device 10.10.1.78. I'm just going to map it. In here as well, we can choose we're able to introduce the IoT device, and then I can even sub that and use a user-defined IoT device type even more than that. But I won't do that for the sake of that demo, and I'm gonna call it that one Rocky IoT. Yeah, I think I haven't done it. And update, and the user is Dash. Now, if we go back to our passive encryption map, we can see now that we do have our IoT device is identified. Now, in here as well with passive encryption, you do have a defined passive encryption control profile, which is allowed, as I said, like it is like a fingerprint, and you do have alerts. Definitely, we don't have any alerts right now. So what I will do is I'll capture a snapshot of that secure state. So I'll do a secure state capture. I'll add that. So now what we've done right now with passive encryption is we took a snapshot or as a fingerprint of that baseline, and any traffic now going from that IoT appliance communicating to, let's say, for example, the server that we pinholed will be logged in alert. And then we're going to demonstrate that now. So let's say if we jump on our IoT device, and let's say if we do a curl command to my my server there. 12. Obviously, it's because it's a self-signed certificate. That is the server there. It's right there. So now let's see how that produced alerts. And here we are. We can see that the IoT device traffic has been flagged as out of the baseline, anonymous, and we have an option here whether to allow that kind of traffic or to block it, or if we go down here, we can block the device completely so it's not be able to even communicate to it at all, or if we want to pinhole it. And also more so as well, if we go into here on the passive encryption, so if you go under network map, and I'll show you how you can get even more details and more specifics about that traffic. So if we go into our pinhole traffic for the IoT appliance and we do view a report, it will bring us even the type of allowed traffic and the type of event that is logged, that it is via the pickup profile, and this is the source, and it logged the destination IP, and then you have a full detail, and it's obviously it's an encrypted traffic as well. So, and here we are, and what we've done now is we captured any traffic from your IoT device. And then just to wrap up, what we've seen so far, we've demonstrated how to network segment and how to do zero trust. And we introduced passive encryption on a internally segmented network, and to significantly enhance your security for your IoT devices. And then, yeah, just over to you, George.
Thank you, Amma. Thank you for that. Thank you, Richard. I'd like to open it up now. If anybody has some questions, please unmute yourself and ask the question. OJ, I think we can open up the floor if possible. Do we have any questions? Just give it another minute if anybody's having problems unmuting. Okay. Well, let's take that as done. Thank you all very much for participating in this webinar, whatever time zone you're watching this. So thank you again for your time. We'll see you next time on our Red Piranha Knowledge Sprint. Yes, look us up on LinkedIn, look us up on our website. Thank you.